Welcome to Kiss the Sun podcast. My name is Daniel Farringer. In this episode, I'm super excited to share that we have a special episode for America's 250th birthday. I was privileged to interview William Hearn, who is the director of a new documentary called The Impossible Dream. And in our conversation, we discuss the genesis behind the film, we discuss the American dream, and then we also talk about how do we move forward in faith when a lot of people are discouraged and want to complain about the hardships and trials that we are experiencing. I think that this conversation is incredibly edifying and encouraging, and it's a conversation that is not being had right now in our country. So here we go now for Kiss the Sun podcast with William Hearn in this special 250th episode for America's birthday. Tell us a little bit about who you are and how you seek to glorify God with your life.
Hey, my name is William Hearn, yes. So I'm a documentary filmmaker right now based out of Western Pennsylvania, just north of Pittsburgh. And, the biggest thing with films is really just trying to impact the country for God and for, overall flourishing and prosperity. But Christ is a big part of that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and I'm super excited for our conversation in this episode. So here we are, America's 250th birthday. It's been really interesting seeing the pictures from America's 200th birthday, and I've seen the videos and the pictures and all that, and it's amazing now to actually be in this year and to experience this in our lifetime. It's just awesome. I honestly think it's been one of the best years here in America that I've experienced. It's just been awesome. This past weekend, we had the largest steam locomotive named Big Boy drive through our area, and people were flocking from all over the place. I went to a smaller town that has one of the largest, I think it's considered the largest concrete bridge in the world. And I was able to actually see it right before I actually went on the bridge. And it was just amazing how many people have flocked in to see history and just be reminded of America's greatness. And so as I've been thinking about America's 250 and sort of thinking about what do I want to cover on the podcast, I heard about this film called The Impossible Dream, and I am super excited to hear more about it. So what is The Impossible Dream about, and then why did you seek to make it?
Yeah. So The Impossible Dream, it's a weird sounding name at first when people realize. So it's a documentary about the American dream. I saw a statistic in late 2024 that said, it was from Pew Research, and it said 47% of Americans don't believe the American dream exists anymore or is possible anymore. And that kind of shocked me to a bit. Everyone knows there's people who have lost faith and hope in the country. But, sometimes you can tend to just think like, oh, those are the Antifa types or, whatever. But when you hear 47%, that's pretty much roughly half of the country. And that's pretty shocking because that's our neighbors. That's, your aunt and uncle down the road. That's the people at your church. You know what I mean? That's half the country. So from that point on, I was like, okay, we have this crew, we have this team. I care about the country. So I'm like, what can we use through this medium that we know of film? What can we do to encourage Americans? And let's actually dive into this question of, does the American dream exist anymore? And that's what we made over the last 2 years.
That is awesome. So how did the film really get started? What was the sort of genesis behind the film? You saw that statistic, and then what led you to dive in, and then how did it all come about?
Yeah. So, after we were like, okay, we are definitely going to do a film for the 250th. It's like you said, this very historic moment to be able to be alive and be a part of. And so then we just started thinking, okay, we know we're diving into this topic. Does the American dream exist? And so then the question is, how do you go into that? How do you tell this? You can have classic documentaries where you interview all these experts, or, it's the 250th, maybe you interview the president, things like that. We were like, we do have some experts and some larger names in the film that's going to be, important no matter what. You want people who can really speak on issues very succinctly and wisely. But The main thrust of the film is going back to the people. So we
Mm.
follow the stories of four main characters from around the country that are just everyday Americans to really analyze through their lives, how are they living the American dream? What is the state of the American dream right now? And then we have roughly 7 or 8 other experts who help tie the points together, can open up more thoughts on stuff. But we're like, yeah, let's go talk to the American people and celebrate them because that's really what the 250th is about, right? We may like or dislike a president, but at the end of the day, the country is the 300 million Americans who are there. So that's really who we're trying to encourage and who we're trying to celebrate in the film.
Nice. So, as you guys were producing, recording, what were some things that you took away that you didn't expect from the film?
I think maybe it's just my generation or the younger people who have spent a majority of their life with online influence or seeing at least decent portion of what you view as America or the economy or industry happening. You see it through online means. And so traveling around the country, it was just really cool to see all the different ways people are living out the American dream. And I'd love to get into what that exactly means because I think a lot of us misunderstand the whole purpose of it, what it actually is at the core. But see the ways in which Americans are flourishing and love one another and are not as, they're discouraged, but they're not truly hateful and lost to the extent that I would say the media would want us to think.
Hmm. So, how would you define the American dream?
Yeah, this was actually a core kind of light bulb moment for me with the film. Maybe when you think when someone says the American dream, that phrase when it comes to your head, what do you think? And not to put you on the spot, but
Yep. I think about prosperity and like almost instant success in some regards, where it's like,
yeah, I would say that's pretty standard, and that's not bad. I would say the general American, when they think of the American dream, they would think material success
yeah,
generally. The house, the 2 cars, the lab and Labrador, the wife and kids. And those are all amazing things.
yep.
But I think it's a misunderstanding of what the dream truly is. If you go back to, and we go into this in the film, so I don't want to maybe ruin too much,
Mhm,
but if you go back to the man who coined the term the American dream, it was a historian, James Adams, and he says, it's not a dream of high wages or motor cars merely, like that's a part of it.
mm,
But paraphrasing him, he says, America is the place where you can live out your purpose and duty without government or other people getting in your way.
mm,
And he also goes on to say the American dream is flourishing. And he wrote this in the
mhm,
1930s, in the very smack in the middle of the Great Depression, because
mm,
he was in a very similar time that we are now. They're coming out of the roaring 20s where material success was amazing and flourishing comparatively to where they've
mm,
been. And then they hit the 30s in the Great Depression. He's scared. Like Americans are going to forget
mhm,
what the American dream is really about. So he says
mhm,
it's not about purpose. That's good, and that's a result. It comes out of the American dream, but at its core, it's about giving you the true sense of liberty. Like you have the chance to do what you should to fulfill your purpose and your duty, and that's what really gives you a
mm,
fulfilling life. You talk to wealthy people, or you talk to people who have made it, so to speak, financially, and
mhm,
I mean that doesn't make them happier, right?
mm,
You look at purpose. Fulfilling purpose is the true success. And I think when we understand that material what success is down here, true
mhm,
purpose and fulfilling that is so much greater and higher.
mm,
And understand that's what the laws were in America were meant to hold and give you. It's so encouraging. You're like, okay, oh, and we can get to this later, like what's the state of the American dream now? But it
mhm,
starts to you start to re-see the picture and financial and material success
mm,
is a result and is important, and it's a good maybe metric to kinda understand other parts of what things are happening in America. But you can even take this from Adams back to the founders. They write life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
mhm,
And they mean the same thing because Jefferson and you go back Edmund Burke, all these people,
mhm, yep,
by happiness, they meant duty and purpose.
mhm,
You read their other writings, and it's very clear that was the meaning of happiness in the day. Today, we've construed
mhm,
happiness to have a very sensual, materialistic
yep,
meaning. But It's just another way in which we've gotten this whole idea backwards.
Yeah, that is fascinating, and I'm super excited to watch this film because I think it's gonna be so interesting, and it is very interesting to consider right now that we're in a time and place now where, as you mentioned, I think about the virtue is has been stripped from life, where it
Yeah.
is like you are just pursuing the success and everything apart from duty and excellence and fortitude and different virtues like that. And it's really interesting because I think there's a lot of people now that are trying to live a life where they are accomplishing all of the success, the material, like all of that stuff, but they're just hollowed out shells. And so I'm really excited because I think that is something that is very much something that a lot of people don't think about is, do these people actually have virtue and character, or are they just empty shells that have possessions and wealth and positions but don't actually have the virtue and the righteousness inside them? One of the things that you had mentioned, and I'm just curious to ask this, how many states did you travel to? What did the recording process look like?
Yeah, so we started production in August of 2025, and, on and off as trips, lined up. We weren't filming straight, and
Yeah.
we probably wrapped in December, and I think we went probably a good 8 or 9 different states, I'd say.
Okay.
So but they're very spread out, so, I mean, on the far end, we had Oregon, which is right up against
Yeah.
the Pacific. We had we were in DC, we were in Florida, we were in a bunch of Midwest states, so kinda hit all over. Tried to at least somewhat slightly represent most
Yeah.
different scenery and demographics. I mean, minus Hawaii and Alaska, unfortunately. Sorry to those people.
We love you guys out there. You're just
Yeah.
far away.
Far. Yep.
Nice, and I'm sure that that had to be quite like a culture shock going from state to state. Because 'cause I've heard people say if you are in one state one day and then, like, another state another day, it's like opposite side of the country. It is, like, almost foreign in a sense because it just feels very different from what
I mean
the place you were just at.
Yeah, I mean, they're very yeah, I wouldn't say a culture shock. Then again, I've been to all lower well, I've been to 49 out of the 50 states. So maybe it's just because I've already experienced them, but definitely very unique cultures inside of the states, inside the areas. And I guess one of the amazing parts of America is there's so much ins and I wouldn't say diversity because that's kind of mean other things and pure diversity is not
Yeah.
maybe necessarily a good thing on its own, but all the different little subcultures that are still
Yeah.
inside of America, where they all still have the same red, white, and blue and the same American flag, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun to just be able to do this
Yeah.
for work.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds awesome. I mean, it's so just unique, like, going to different places, going to different areas, even of, like, a state. So we're both in Pennsylvania, and so it's really interesting. Like one of the things that I became aware of when I moved to Southern Pennsylvania was like people treat Northern Pennsylvania and
Yeah,
Pennsylvania like two different states. It's like
yeah,
the mountains are like the divide. It's like you're from the mountains or you're from normal like Pennsylvania. So
right.
it was really just interesting to experience, and even just the different foods and just the different cities and the landscapes and everything is just vastly different inside of a state and
Yeah,
even from I mean even more so from state to state. I mean, so it's just really interesting to see the beauty and but also the culture and the customs and different things like that. I mean, it's just very unique to see as you travel around. So I'm sure that was really cool experiences. So, as people are going to be watching this film here very shortly, where can people see the film first off? And then, sort of, what do you hope the film will instill
Yeah.
in the
So
audience?
we're launching it free on YouTube. We've got a bunch of different partners and different people in the film itself have decent followings. So we've been able to really combine those to create a ton of momentum. So it will be free starting June 27th, Saturday. It will be free on YouTube. And you can go either the channel would be youtube.com/ the 250 film, where 250 is 250. Or obviously, if you follow any of the people in the film, it'll be all over. There'll be links everywhere. But I hope people honestly leave encouraged. I mean, it goes back to that first goal. It's a massive topic to cover, right? And no one can really do it justice in 10 films. Like, what do we say for the 250th, right? Such a huge thing. And there's so many, you know, there's a Young Washington film coming out that covers that side. There's Hillsdale's done a documentary called Revolutionary America. There's that side of it.
Mm,
We're covering, day almost like lives of Americans a day. Like we've got a rancher, we've got a firefighter, we've got
mm,
a lady who's a coffee shop owner. We're taking that side of it, but there's so much. So in a way, we can't cover everything, but I hope it gives them a glimpse of this is a direction we can go for the next 250 years, and it's encouraging.
mm. Yes. Yeah, I am so excited for the film.
Thank you.
I have been just in awe, and like every single time you guys post a reel about the film, I'm just like, can't wait for this film. It
Thank
is
you.
just you guys did such a good job.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. It is just awesome, and I have tremendously been encouraged just seeing the reels and just everything that you guys have been laying out with the film thus far, and now getting to talk with you this episode is just it's awesome. So I am really excited about this film. So
Yeah. I hope it lives up. I hope it lives up to the hype. I love it. But yeah.
So this is really sort of where I want to camp out in our conversation because as I've been seeing the reels for this film and just watching you guys like the behind the scenes work of it, I thought this would be a really interesting conversation to have, even specifically because even how I even first heard about the film and different things like that. But right now we're at a time which I mentioned earlier where we are lacking virtue, where we're just almost living off of popularity, different things like that. And there are a lot of people in their 20s who want to give up. They want to complain. They want to just basically air their grievances about all the hardships that they're experiencing right now. So, what advice, what encouragement would you give to them as they watch this film and then sort of think about their life and America and the next 250 years? What encouragement, what advice, where would you send them? Because
Yeah.
that is something I think we need to seriously consider is how do we move forward with resilience in the next 50, 100 years, however long the Lord grants us to live, but then also future generations is how do we persevere through the hardships and through the trials?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think we can speak specifically to younger Americans, but I think everything we'll say applies to all Americans. You have on the left, you have a lot of people who I think truly dislike the core of what makes up America with, traditional values and
Mhm,
a strong nation and culture. And, you know, I feel bad for them. And I think they've just been taught a different set of values. And so they dislike the country. I think and so that leads them to also be maybe angry or upset with the country. I think on the other side, you have people on the right, especially young people who love the country so much and care about it so much that when they see true corruption and true evil that's happening, they're discouraged by it and
mhm,
also don't see a way forward. So speaking to those people, but I would say a majority of Americans love the country, left or right. I'm not trying to just attack the left. I would
mhm,
say let's speak to the people who care about the country. You know,
mhm,
if you don't care about it, that's another issue. we're gonna have to deal with that separately. But if you love the country and you're discouraged, what would we say, right? And I think there's a few different things. So I want to come at a couple different angles.
Mhm.
One would be big picture, one would be a historical view, and then one would be like actually looking at what's happening today. And
Mm.
there is decent reason to be anxious or discouraged, if we're being honest. Like you look at what's happened with the Epstein files, and you just look at general corruption or big government bureaucracy,
Mhm.
and you're like, man, this is kind of rough. But first, let's look at the history a little bit. And, you know, whether it's the school system, I don't know what exactly, but people do not know the detailed history of the United States over the past 250 years. And so it's very easy to feel like we're in the worst time now. And you go back and just go read some like president inaugural addresses, because that's a good place to find the kind of the tempo and the thoughts of the people that day, because the president coming in is trying to express that he will fulfill their desires, right? You go read different presidents and their inaugural addresses, and you see it kind of just goes in waves of there's a really good time, and then there's a harder time. There's a good time, there's a harder time. You read FDR, obviously his address during the Great Depression. And if you didn't know it was him, you'd think it was written today. He's like economy, housing,
Mhm.
all these issues that we were talking about today. And he feels like it's impossible to buy houses because they're so expensive. Feels like the
Mhm.
economy's tanking.
Mhm.
Prices of
Yeah.
goods are crazy, all this stuff. And you're like, wait, what?
Mhm.
But that was the 30s and we got past it. And,
Mhm.
I think so. First, understanding this is going to sound crazy. There's never been a good time in America.
Mm.
And I don't mean that never America's never been good or that we've never had amazing flourishing times, but there's never been that perfect utopia, and there won't be. It's Earth. But people, like to idolize different times. And so maybe for older people today, it would be, we're kind of getting past the 50s, but it'd be the 50s or it'd be the
Mm.
the
Yeah.
80s, right? And they're like, "Oh, it was perfect then." Well, it's because what they remember when they were young, but there were horrible issues then. You read what was
Mhm.
happening in the 70s, you're like, "Man, this was crazy." And then, rise of the new left and
Yeah.
basically domestic terror attacks going crazy.
Mm.
You read about the 60s, or, you go back,
Mm.
there was the 50s, there was 20 years of a little bit easier. Well, then before that, there was the Great Depression. Before that, there was the 20s were good. Well, before that, there was a really hard time. So it comes in waves. And I think because we haven't been taught history, we don't realize that, hey, it's been hard too before. They've gone past it.
Mm.
We're gonna get past it again. Like we can do this. So there's I want that confidence to come. Like,
Mm.
the sacrifices that our forefathers made doesn't matter if we don't do anything. We've been
Yeah.
given this huge, amazing place.
Mm.
And if we don't, it may be hard. It could be the hardest time it's ever been.
Mhm.
Does that really matter? Because we're called to do something about it. Well, if we just are overwhelmed by the problems,
Mhm.
they're not still not going away. So we have to do something. But I would argue it's not actually as bad as we think.
Mhm.
Now, AI is a bit of a new beast
Mhm.
to deal with, and that's a whole
Mhm.
nother discussion.
Yep.
We won't go into that. But still, I do think America is not at the worst time it's ever been in. I mean, we're not fighting a civil war right now, right?
Mhm.
Media might want us to get a little closer, but we're not.
Mhm.
And then I would actually say there's more opportunity now than there ever has been. And
Mm.
what I mean by that is, like, if you're trying to start a company or you want to start a new endeavor, there's always going to be a certain amount of capital that you need to start that. And I think with the internet and with speed of communication and speed of travel, all these things that were barriers, like over time they've gone, it used to be to get west to do the gold, right? A couple month trip where you might die multiple times. Now
Uh,
in 3 hours, you can be there on a plane ride. Just the doors are wide open. It's different. So it might be a little new, but opportunities are so prevalent if you will look for them. And then I would say that also opportunities is a comparative thing too. You compare it to the rest of the world, right? I lived for I want to say around 10 years in Asia, in a third world country.
mm.
And based out of that, I've seen all over the world. And ask anyone, especially veterans, if you want to get like a little refresh on how amazing it is in America, go ask a veteran about some stories and ask him how good do you think America is compared to the rest of the world. And it is wild. I mean, there's no comparison, and that's partially, I have memories of being overseas for a few years and coming back to the US, and just the feeling of, wow, we think we're under oppression here, and I'm not downplaying any Americans' experiences. There have been truly
Yeah.
horrible things that the government has done, or
Mhm.
ways in which corruption should not exist that it does. That's absolutely true. But just comparatively to the rest of the world, America is such a free and open place, and there's so much opportunity. Like you look at just other systems around the world, Hinduism in Asia, near where I was,
Mm.
you were born in a certain caste, therefore you are relegated to a few certain jobs. You cannot do whatever you want. You cannot fulfill your purpose. You must be, you were born low caste, well, you're going to be a garbage man. I'm sorry, that's your
Mhm.
lot in life, right?
Mhm.
That's 1.5 billion people living in that system,
Yeah.
right? So you look around the world and everyone's still trying to come here, so that must say something too. But the amount of opportunity is amazing. And then I would also say but then, people bring up against that and they'll be like, well, look at all the corruption, or look at the deep state, right? And that's true. It's there. There's no denying that. Anyone who
Mhm.
the past 20 years has paid attention to how bureaucracy works, some people might say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, right? The moment you interact with, and I've know some politicians, I know that world a little bit.
Mhm.
There's no doubt. Everyone knows at minimum, it's a bureaucracy, a massive bureaucracy. You think the largest, most powerful nation in the world managing 300 million people, there's going to be a massive bureaucracy. Your little small town government has a bureaucracy. Your job, your work with
Mhm.
30 employees has a bureaucracy. What do you think a government managing the most powerful country in the world? So
Mhm.
that's there. That does
Yeah.
cause issues. But I also want to say, we just had the primaries in Pennsylvania. And so I have a story from that is, I think, a bit of an example of understanding the bureaucracy a little more. There are truly nefarious things happening, like with the Epstein files, where elites can get away with things.
Mhm.
We have to fight that and work against it.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the day to day things that affect you. I would posit that the system, you could say, is less broken than it is unused.
Mhm.
Picture, like, as an example, you have your yard, right? And
Mhm.
say your yard is the system. Well, that'll be example. And then say you have a lawnmower brand new, and that's the government. Okay. And the or the system, the grass is even just the people, and the lawnmower is the government. Grass is the nation, the lawnmower is the government. You know, say that lawnmower is brand new, it should work at 100%, right? But say it actually is 30% broken and it only works at 70% power, right? So it is broken. But then say you never mow your lawn, it just sits in there, right? The grass is going to grow and it's going to look like that thing is totally broken and unusable. But the fact is, it's not. You could have a 70% perfectly mowed lawn if you actually use that lawnmower. And so going to the primary, for example, here in the county I am, just south of me, there was a race for state house representatives.
Mhm.
There are around 30,000 registered Republicans in this
Yeah.
county, in this district. And I want to say just over 6,000 voted in the primary. Okay. 15%. And the primary race came down between two different Republicans, and the difference was 100 votes. Right. And I would say the wrong person won. But
Mhm.
regardless,
Yeah.
you could say this would be the difference between a deep state guy and who's,
Mhm.
just there to do what the donors want, do what the
Mhm.
lobbyists
Yeah.
push, right? Versus a good guy. Well,
Mhm.
the deep state, so to speak,
Mhm.
actor won by 100 votes. Okay, he's gonna go 3 years from now. All the Republicans in this district are gonna be like, man, he's not doing anything. He's horrible. This deep state, it's crazy. The system's broken. It's like, no,
Mhm.
only 15% of you voted. It's not the system's broken, it's unused. And, I maybe partially it's just we Americans aren't really taught how to vote. Like
Mhm.
the general election of the president, it's the cherry on top. But huge majority of what actually affects your lives is happening county level, state level.
Mhm.
much less federal, and it's happening. The primaries are the most important because if you're
Mhm.
generally whatever party you're registered in,
Yeah.
most people vote
Mhm.
for their party. It's just how it is. I mean, we see with President Trump a lot of centrists, people in the center and the kind of
Mhm.
center left shifted right. But generally speaking, it's going to be a left right issue. So you have to make sure you pick the right person for your primary. And if only 15% of
Mhm.
people are choosing who that primary person is, that's very easy to manipulate. If we're speaking nefarious acts, very easy to manipulate.
Right.
I could just spend an extra $50,000, make sure I get 100 more people. How easy is that? So
Mm.
let's change that. We might start seeing some real changes.
Mm.
I think there are definite laws and regulations or maybe just pressure that needs to come to fix other problems. We can talk about that, but
Mhm.
just as a big picture view, let's think, okay, maybe there's corruption, but maybe there's still a lot possible if we would actually do it. Because
Mm.
looking at the numbers, Americans aren't involved. And I would say, voting, we all talk about it as if it's a privilege.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's a duty. Like
Mhm.
this country and this place was given to you. Billions of people don't get the chance to be born here. You did. You
Mhm.
very much better vote and do your duty
Mhm.
to make sure
Yeah.
that all the sacrifices that our forefathers made stay. Because if you're just sitting back there and complaining, I don't want to hear anything. If you're voting and you're doing your duty and you're discouraged, that's amazing. Let's
Yeah.
let's talk. Let's try to do more because there is problems. There are real problems, but
Mhm. Yeah.
the majority of people in this case,
Mhm.
85% probably couldn't do anything. So
Yeah.
I think that's a start.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a
Yeah.
very long answer, but it's definitely something I think matters.
Yeah, definitely. We're very much in a time when people are uninformed about voting. So like I've worked polling places before in the primaries for candidates, and
Yeah.
it is pretty unbelievable how easy it is to tell people about a candidate and like, get them to vote because they don't know that much about
Most
candidates
people
because
don't
they
even
aren't
know
informed.
who's running, in a county or in your town. And it's like, well, you're failing in your duty as an
Yeah.
American. Also, if you understand the political system, not to cut you off, your mayor or your councilman, most people or a lot of
Mhm.
politicians start small, right? If they win, that's a huge boost. That the fact that they won is a huge help to win the next one up,
Mhm.
next election up higher.
Yeah.
And, if you win mayor, that's going to be a massive boost over your competitor to win,
Mm. Yeah.
maybe your state representative,
Mhm.
whatever, and just moving that way up the ladder. So voting and weeding out the bad people in these races is
Mhm.
key. So that's just one way that the political system tends to work. Now we could say that career politicians is not a good thing.
Mhm.
I'd be with you on that, but that's kind of how it is right now. So
Mm.
pay attention to your lower races and pay attention to your local community.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's really good. So, one of the things I was thinking through as you were talking about like knowing your history is I I have been going into family genealogy the last couple of months, and that is unbelievably inspiring when you begin to understand your family history, you understand your place in time, how your grandfathers, great grandfathers, great 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 grandfathers, and so many other people worked hard where their life it was in very much the same way as yours presently is, that there were hardships, that there were trials where they had to move and do hard things and just spent their lives really building
Yeah.
and cultivating, starting a family, all that stuff. And so I think that is tremendously helpful to just know your history and to see the sacrifice that your forefathers have done for this country, but also for you and getting you to the place where you are.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely true. And I think I don't want to just come on this and come across as if I'm just blaming young Americans like, oh, you're not grateful. You don't understand it. I mean, there are real problems that
Mm.
in ways some of the issues today weren't as hard for past generations. You look at housing.
Mhm.
So there's some ways in which the problem of housing is blown too far, I believe, if you look at the numbers. But
Mhm.
generally speaking, especially in your if you're in a city and you're kind of, you're going to be in that area because of family, housing is crazy. right? It's
Mhm. Yeah.
4.7 times the average salary versus the average house, it was a lot less past years. Now,
Mhm. Yeah.
the size of the house has also gone up. So if you choose a smaller house, it's actually not that much more expensive comparatively than it was, say in the 50s. But yeah, that is a problem. So I'm not saying young people are just, oh,
Mm,
they're selfish or complaining, but truly, this would be in another way in which my purpose is here. I mean, for Hollywood, they don't tell the stories to be proud of or to help us understand our history or understand who's the giants
mhm,
that like we're standing on their shoulders.
mhm,
So that's another way in which Christians and conservatives should be stepping into the gap, because education and affecting the hearts and minds of Americans is the long-term solution. Policy is important, just as important, but it's a top-down approach, and it doesn't have the same lasting power as changing our culture.
yeah, and I think to myself, it's gonna require us to be thankful, to
Yeah.
recognize what the Lord has blessed us with, and to step forward in faith, remembering what the Lord has done, how the Lord's grace has been upon our land, upon our families, and then just step forward with courage and faith, and just
Mhm.
moving forward step by step by step. And I think one of the things that I know a lot of people in my sphere are struggling with is finding a suitable spouse, getting married. I think that is something where I feel like that's one of the most tangible things that I've
Mhm.
noticed is actually getting married is like one of the hardest things now.
Mm.
It is just really interesting to see the hardships that singles have had, and it's been something that I feel like I've noticed a lot is where a lot of people just want to give up and crawl into a hole and just never come out of the hole. So one of the interesting things about even how I got connected with William was through what his wife Madison does. So tell us a little bit about what your wife Madison does and sort of what she's been doing over the last number of years.
Yeah. She's had a work with Christian young Christian women, single women specifically, to, in a way, teach different values,
Mhm,
help them, you know, prepare or become the type of people that would also attract a
mhm,
good Christian man. And,
mhm,
I can't speak too much. That'd be something, that whole
mhm,
ministry and process would be something more for her to talk about. But
mhm,
yeah, that's definitely, especially for Christians, there is a big push from 20 something year old American men to the right and to God more, though it might take a while for them to maybe learn
mhm,
and believe all the specific truths, but there's a big push that direction. But if you look at the data, young American women are
mhm,
generally far less religious and less conservative. So
mhm,
yeah, I was fortunate to find my wife, and
mhm.
it's definitely a struggle, I know, for a lot of
Yeah,
men, but that's not something totally that I feel comfortable going into, because it's not the
yeah,
experience or
yeah.
expertise that I have.
Yeah, so it's interesting because basically how I even heard about her was through she launched Saved Singles, which is just a way for Christian singles that are conservative to actually connect and meet. And the Lord has definitely blessed and prospered that whole endeavor. And I don't know, I'm encouraged because I think a lot of people want to just say like, oh well, things are not going well, so I'm just going to crawl into a hole and never do anything. And I think there are a lot of things before us, like your film being one of them, where there are just so many opportunities in so many different areas now. I mean, the last 2, 3 years now, I know of so many more Christian businesses, Christian
Mhm.
families that are farming, different things like that, where there are a lot more Christians now that are actually saying, "Okay, here are some of the challenges that we are having. But here are the opportunities that lay before us." And my encouragement to our audience is where are the opportunities that are before you? to step out in faith to glorify God and to stop complaining and to start doing something productive, something that will glorify God, that Lord willing will just multiply, something that will bless and build up our country. Because one of the things I think that we neglect is not only is America shaped by government, but America is also shaped by the businesses and the
Yeah.
industries as well. And so that would be my encouragement, is just to step out in faith and to plot and to find those people, those resources, those opportunities that are before you, and to lean into them, to connect with like-minded believers, like-minded Americans. Get to know your neighbors, I think, is a big thing, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of things locally that we have neglected. So we're getting better now at thinking more locally, but
Mhm.
I that's something that I would just recommend, is
Absolutely.
be willing to step out, think locally, and just start connecting with fellow Christians in your state, in your local communities, and put away the complaining and all the hardships that you want to focus on and worry about, and just step forward in faith. And it's been interesting, because as I've been thinking about this year and where we are at as a country, I think to myself that there's so many people that are just depressed and just want to complain about everything. And I think to myself, if there's going to be more hardships, like hardships that are greater than what we've experienced in our lifetime, it's really going to break us, because it's like little things where it's like some hardships that are really small
Mm.
in comparison, thankfully, to like a massive war or something like that, seem to break people quite quickly. And so I think that as we step out in faith, and as we do things, as we connect with people, I think that would be my encouragement, is know how to work hard and get good. Learn how to work hard with the pain when you work hard.
You mentioned getting to know your neighbors, and, I think a chunk of the discouragement or depression today is because people don't have other deep human connection, and we in America have forgotten the need for that a bit. But
Mm,
since the dawn of time, humans need other humans. And even you talk about whether it's marriage or it's business or
mhm,
it's your whatever entrepreneurial thing you're doing or trying to help the country, you know, just look at what every good entrepreneur and business owner says. Like, go watch their videos. The most important thing is networking, right? You especially, you listen to some people. The one that's coming to mind right now is Ryan Serhant, who runs this massive real estate brokerage in New York City and now one of the biggest in America. For a while, he had a rule for himself. He was going to meet, I think it was it was either 5 or it was 15 new people every day, right? And I mean, I run a business as well. Meeting new people is a huge thing. Anyone who's trying to start a business, they have to have a quota of this is how many new people I'm going to meet every day, because that's how you make connections. That's how you find
mhm,
investors. That's how you just get better with being around people. And so apply that to every part of your life. What,
mm,
maybe you want to get better at talking to people because you
mm,
want to stop being scared around girls, or vice versa, dudes.
mhm,
Or maybe you want to start a business,
mhm,
or you just
yeah,
want to have more friends and you want to get to know your neighbors in your community. Either way,
mhm,
we're so used to getting all our information from a screen. And that I say that as someone who's in that same generation,
mhm,
whether it's
yeah,
news or it's entertainment, Instagram or TikTok, or
yeah,
whether it's anything, it usually
mhm,
a lot of times comes through my iPhone, right? But we've thought that we can also make our relationships come through there, and it doesn't work. So
mhm.
really kind of reset your brain on meeting people, I think would be a huge thing.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a really good word, because I think even trying to learn a new skill,
Mhm.
you can watch all sorts of different stuff, but oftentimes reading's super beneficial in that regard, but meeting people that actually know how to do things
Yeah.
is tremendously helpful. So, yeah, I think that is a really good good word of encouragement. So as we wrap up, how can our audience follow you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the most important thing would be watching the film. Go to the film and watch it. You know, the film website is 250film.com, so 250film.com, or like we said, youtube.com/250film. That would be for the documentary. For me personally, Instagram at the William Hearn, or there'll be links at the websites, and you'll be able to see all the social medias. But yeah,
Awesome. Well, thank you, William, so much for coming on the Kiss the Sun podcast. Thank you so much for your film. I'm so excited to watch it, and just keep on plotting, and just keep being faithful where the Lord has planted you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Kiss the Sun podcast. Our prayer is that you would love, submit, and serve the Lord Jesus Christ in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe for future episodes, and consider leaving a 5-star review and sharing it with others. Visit us at everlastingrock.net to learn about our purpose, our team, and to find more of our podcasts and read some of our blogs or our blog series entitled God Created. By the grace of God through Christ, may you build your life on the Lord, who is an everlasting rock.